Hello and welcome to the 2024 Marshall County High School AP Government Town Hall. I am Connor Prince and this is Caden Seaford. Tonight we welcome elected officials from our county and state government to discuss issues of concern from local residents. Our assembly tonight will consist of two halves, approximately 45 minutes each. After the first half, there will be a brief pause to introduce new moderators. First, we would like to thank the Marshall County Public Library for the use of their facility, MediaCom for videoing tonight's forum, our audience members for attending tonight, and most importantly, our elected officials for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here tonight. We are live streaming this event via Facebook, and questions will come from the live feed as well from our audience members. Audience, if you have a question, please write on the back of the provided program and raise it when ready for a student to take. We will then provide you with another sheet of paper in case you have any further questions. Elected officials, please feel free to pass the mic to another member if they wish to add to your comments. We had a message from our Lieutenant Governor, but unfortunately technology was not in our favor. We will now begin with our first question that are simply for our enjoyment. Representative Freeland, what is your least favorite genre of music?
Least favorite genre of music? Gosh, I like all music, to tell you the truth. I don't know. Maybe the 90s. I actually didn't like that music too much. I love the 80s, but the 90s.
What about rap?
What?
What about rap?
Yeah. Well, no, but. Yeah.
All right, first, second question. Senator Carroll, outside of Mr. Carrick, who is your favorite neighbor?
Mr. Carrick's my favorite neighbor. We have had words over the years. I guess the Wiles, Greg and Marty Wiles, because I've known them for a long time. But Mr. Carrick is a good neighbor. He doesn't speed past my house or throw anything out in the yard, so he's a pretty good neighbor.
Commissioner Monty Collins, last year you were asked who your favorite daughter was. Who is it this year?
This is live streamed. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. Whichever one gets the best scholarship. How about that? And they're juniors, so we're going to need that.
Commissioner Eddie McGuire, have you ever wanted to shout you should practice your right to remain silent during a fiscal court meeting?
Oh, wow. Not this term, no. Last term, sometimes I had to remind myself I had that right.
Commissioner Marty Barrett, what is your favorite brand of overalls?
Key. I got divided pocket and put all your stuff.
That's too easy.
I'm a simple man.
Judge Braggs, who would win in the staring contest, you or Mr. Andy Pagel?
Me.
He's too nice. I can't look away.
He is.
Councilman Farley, your wife submitted 2 questions for you. Are you really at the auction barn in Benton every Friday night? And when she is not in the car, are you seriously listening to Taylor Swift without her?
First question, yeah, pretty much every Friday night I'm down there. You will never catch me listening to Taylor Swift. I can say that 100% for sure.
I can help him on the first question. I can verify he's correct.
And no more taking questions from wives. That is not fair.
Mr. Darnold, a very loyal constituent would like to know, why do you not take out the trash?
What did he just say about no more questions from wives? I do take out the trash. I've got a truck now, so I can actually take it to the dumpsters. So, but yeah, she mentioned something about submitting a question last night. So yeah.
Sheriff Matt Hilbert, in a game of Would You Rather tase Mr. McGuire or Mr. Barrett?
Ooh, Mr. McGuire, without a doubt. No question. That was way too easy. Did that come from my wife?
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And now for the real questions. The first question is either for Senator Carroll or Representative Freeland. Do you support state funds going to private schools? And if so, how will this money affect our public schools?
State funds going to private schools, actually, that'll be for the voters to decide. So I hope people realize that the constitutional amendment that'll be coming up in November is actually to let the voters decide how that money will be used. And in a sense, it will give the ability for that decision to be made, that discussion to be had. Right now, it can't be done that way, other than Keys money, that is taxpayer money, can go to private universities. So in a sense, it is being done. But here in Marshall County and West Kentucky, what we have here is a little different than what some of the other areas have, maybe like in Jefferson County. I think that question would be more support for private schools if you lived in those areas. So it's a little different areas. But here, I mean, I'm certainly love our schools here. And Danny and I think we've both supported record funding budgets for our schools. But I do think there are individual circumstances where a child maybe can't flourish in a certain school system, so maybe they deserve that choice to be able to have. I think, you know, it wouldn't be widespread. I don't support just saying you go wherever you want to and the money follows you, but I think in certain circumstances, I think it would be good. I think we've got kids that maybe just can't flourish in the current system.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that the entire state's not like our area. There are schools throughout the state, especially in some of the urban areas, that are failing school systems year after year. And parents need a choice. They need options for their kids because, as Chris said, it's whatever works for that kid. And that could be various options, and we need to have all those options available. And it's important to keep in mind also that charter schools, and that's the primary drive behind this bill. I think we're one of, 45 states in this nation have charter schools. It works. And it's an option. They're public schools. It's public tax dollars, and they're just operated differently. It's another option. And but I am glad that it's going to be on the ballot, and something of that magnitude that has been that controversial, the people do need to decide. All the polling shows that the majority of people are for school choice. And I know the school systems are concerned about the financial aspect of it, and we'll have to be careful about that. But it's all to scale. I mean, if there are kids that are coming out that are going into charter schools, then the number of staff members will decline. And so, you know, it's all relative, but we will learn as we go, and we learn from other states where it has worked very well. And but it's all about the kids, and I'll take the heat for that. And you know, I think we saw through COVID that kids learn differently in whatever environment it is, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's online schooling, and we need to have all those options available. You want to answer that one?
No.
Commissioner Eddie McGuire. Residents in and around Harvey do not have access to county water. What can you and your fellow commissioners do to appropriate enough funds to give your constituents water?
All we can say is that it's a work in progress right now. Coming up through that area, Jonathan Creek has kind of come up through into the Harvey area. I think they're making kind of the most progress right now in that area. We've just finished up in the last year the Soldier Creek project. Benton is a little different scenario because they stop at the stave mill. And right now, as of today, they don't have the infrastructure to push it any further into that area. So right now, at this point, we're looking at coming up through with Jonathan Creek Water District. And it's just a matter of budgeting year after year. We've still got several ongoing water projects that are going on, and it's a slow, painful task, but we are moving forward on it. So.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for Commissioner Monty Collins, Eddie McGuire, or Marty Barrett.
I'll let you start.
See what the question is.
What are the current top priorities for the fiscal court?
That's all you, buddy.
I would say that's one of them. Water. We have done quite a few water projects since I've been in office for 6 years, and very proud of those. And thank our state representative and senator here for sending that money down so that we're able to do that. That's one. Of course, the communications, Commissioner McGuire has been very key in that project, and hopefully that will be wrapped up very soon. Yeah, by the end of this year. I know that's been a slow go as well. And then I would say the other thing that we've done through the budgeting process is like most businesses, private businesses have had to do, and that is look at our pay scale and get some of these employees that have been, whether it's at the jail or 911 or whatever it is, we're losing folks out there to all kinds of different jobs because of the pay scale that we had, and that's a tough job. I mean, that's tough to go in and be a deputy jailer for $13 an hour. So we've worked really hard to be able to find monies to be able to do that, and even have another raise for those folks this year in our budget. So we're proud of that.
We'll go first.
Sure. On that same question, I think the water, internet is priorities. Like you said, our employees, bringing them up, try to get them where we can retain them, and so they can make a better living. So.
Thank you. Judge Executive Kevin Sparks, what is the current status of the businesses within Southwest One Industrial Park? How effective has it been in promoting local business growth?
Excuse me. Current status, we have United Systems out there, full operation. We have several things that we have to sign confidentiality agreements on, and there is a company looking in Southwest One as we speak. We have another situation going on, hope to have a big announcement sometime soon, but those things, for a lot of reasons, are under confidentiality agreements till they get everything secured. So really, we can't discuss anything ongoing. We're working very aggressively, I can assure you on that, because you're either growing or you're not, and that can be population, jobs, et cetera. I think there'll be possibility of an announcement out of Calvert, sometime in the future. So has that had an impact specifically on other businesses? I don't know that it has had a direct impact, but most of the time there are indirect impacts from employment and then their purchasing power within the community, and that has trickled down effect.
This question is for any county official. Do you have any plans or ideas for how to involve younger people in politics?
Don't everybody raise their hand at once.
I mean, over the last couple of years, I've been the chairman of the Republican Party here in Marshall, and we've really made some efforts to try to grow the young Republican side of ours. And when we say young Republicans, it's anybody 40 and under that wants to join and help. And there's so many ways that even folks that aren't old enough to run for office can get involved in. There's internships with congressmen. There's You know, you can come in during campaign season. We're getting ready to go into a presidential hot season. You can put up signs. You can knock on doors. You can learn how to run a campaign. That way, if you ever decide to run for office, you'll kind of know how that structure works. When I came into it, I didn't know anything, and I had to brainstorm and Google and everything else to learn how to run a campaign. And, you know, social media is a huge issue now. It's different. 20 years ago, running a campaign was way different than it is now. I mean, you have to build an audience. You have to build that that following, so to speak, on your social media platforms for people to get to know you, for the folks that you can't go out and meet. A county election, a county-wide election is a large election. There's several doors there. You know, we've got 24,000 registered voters, probably 13,000 households. There's no way that I can get to every household, or any of us up here could get to every household. And we're always looking for folks that want to help. In 18, I had two folks, younger folks, that I paid them to go knock doors. You know, I knew that I was still working a full-time job, and you know, I didn't have time to get out to all those doors, so I employed other folks to do that. We're always looking for people to be engaged in that. There's probably a Young Democrats as well, and several other organizations that would be glad to help you all pursue whatever it is that you're passionate about from the political spectrum.
Councilman Kevin Farley. There seems to be an ongoing problem with the roads cracking. Is this problem being addressed?
It is being addressed, and I know at our last meeting, we appropriated we almost doubled our paving budget for this coming year. But if you'll notice, if you've driven down I-24, I-65, I-69, any of those, it's not something that was just, you know, a local problem. For whatever reason, this particular winter was a tough winter on roads. But we did appropriate, I think, almost twice what we normally do for paving for this upcoming paving season, because, you know, we know there are some rough roads out there. Nobody hates hitting a pothole worse than I do. And if I could touch on the one question about getting younger people involved, we've had some in leadership programs come to council meetings before, and it's something they're required to do. So many young people, I didn't know what went on before I brought something to the council to try to get passed. But I think it'd be great, you know, to have young people come to either the meetings with the fiscal court or to a council meeting, because you can learn a lot by attending those.
Jason Darnold, what are your thoughts on running all elections as nonpartisan races?
All elections, I would say no. But the more local you get, the more it makes sense to me. I would say that anytime that the office is a policy-making office, then, you know, I think that should probably be a partisan office with parties involved, because you are shaping the laws that will be passed and the policies, how money is spent. So I'm in favor of continuing for those offices to be partisan. When you're talking about some local offices, I'll just use the ones that we have here locally in Kentucky: county clerk, circuit clerk, county attorney, judges, other prosecutors, commonwealth attorneys, offices like that. We're not involved in formulating policy. We're just tasked with the jobs that we have, either executive or judicial, to do what we're tasked to do with statutorily. So it's less important, in my opinion, for those to be partisan. I'm an independent. I ran as an independent, and I've always used the example as far as the circuit clerk and the county clerk or the PVA. Does it really make a difference what their view is on the southern border? I mean, not really. I might like to know that, you know, just as conversation, but what I really want to know about my PVA and my county clerk and my circuit clerk is, can they do the job that they're tasked to do? And that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with with state or national politics.
Thank you. Sheriff Matt Hilbert, do you think senior citizens should be required to take a driver's test to keep their license?
Well, you know, obviously that varies from one person to the next. You know, I've got a mother-in-law, bless her heart, has got dents all over her car that I probably need to make her take a test. And then there's people who are, you know, operate just fine. So do I think that there's a certain age that you ought to automatically have to? No. Now, there is a system in place currently where if, you know, you feel someone isn't capable, we can have them do a medical retest. And, you know, we can do that. We can fill out the forms in our office for that, submit that. If anyone has any kind of complaint or concern about someone, then there already is a system in place to have that reviewed. And I feel like that works pretty well. So I would hate for any elderly person, just because they reach a certain age, automatically have to retest at that point. My mother-in-law, however, we're going to talk.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
She doesn't do Facebook.
Okay, this next question is for Senator Carroll. At last year's town hall meeting, you stated that there are growing extremist factions in your party. What is your assessment of that situation now, and what do you attribute this to?
It is worse than it was last year, and I've been very vocal about this. In the 10 years that I've been in Frankfort, this was by far the most difficult session that I've had. There are some Democrats that are moderate that I would probably feel more comfortable with caucusing than I do some of those that we have within our own caucus. And, you know, that's getting young people involved in politics. That's one of the barriers, and that's one of the deterrents right now, is we are so polarized and we are so extreme on both sides that most of us who lie somewhere in the middle, we're getting left out of all of this. And you know, it takes up so much time just dealing with the extreme views and you know, pushing back from the other side, and one side's got to push back further, and then innocent kids sometimes get caught up in the middle of all of this, and it's very frustrating. And that's what you've seen at the national level the last few years is trickling down into the states. And every election, we're starting to see more of the extreme views enter into office. And it's become a place that, you know, because of all the extremism, because of all the personal attacks, people don't want to run for office anymore. And, you know, financially, everybody says, well, what do y'all make, about $150,000? It may, with all the time that we put in, it might be a minimum wage job. That's it. I haven't cleared over 40,000. That's it. And think about, for us, it's a full day just to go to one meeting. So we have to drive up and drive back, and so it's not about the money. It's a commitment, and you got to be in it for the right reasons. And every year it gets a little more difficult because of the atmosphere. And you know, those that are more extreme in their views seem to be more likely to run for office these days. And as a result, that's what we're getting. So be careful about who you vote for. And that's why, you know, as far as knowing what party someone belongs to, with the views getting as extreme as they are, I think that's far more important than it's ever been. And if that's a mayor or a judge executive, you know, that's in a lot of ways, that's how your county's going to go, or your city. And I've seen in cities a difference it can make from someone who is perhaps far left or far right. It can change the whole makeup and atmosphere in that city or county. So it is important. I hope someday that we come back to the middle. You all know those pictures that you see where it shows Joe Biden and Donald Trump walking down a country road together holding hands? That's what needs to happen. They both need to retire, and we need to bring some new leadership into this country that are statesmen, stateswomen, and to set an example for the rest of it. The extreme, you know, if I sound fed up with all that, I am. I'm tired of extreme views, I'm tired of extreme people, and I'm tired of innocent people in the middle getting left out of all of that. So I could preach all night on that, but I will leave it at that.
This next question is for Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. In 2018, a school shooting rocked our county, state, and surrounding areas to its core. These tragedies are seeming to pop up more and more all over our country. On the state level, What legislation or other political drafts do you support to help aid in this crisis?
Thank you. I'm still trying to think of Joe Biden and Donald Trump walking down the road. No, that's an extremely important subject, and the first year that I came into Frankfurt was when we passed Senate Bill 1, and Danny was one of the ones that worked a lot on that, and very important legislation. It was model legislation in the whole entire United States, and it set apart the school resource officers here in Kentucky. And just this last year, I'm proud that in the budget we allocated for school resource officers $20,000 per resource officer per building. So Marshall County, if they have 11, I think, is that right? 12. So 12 times 20,000, it's be $240,000 that the school will receive from the state to help pay for that, and that's important. And the reason we do that is to encourage the schools. There's several schools in Kentucky that don't have a single SRO, and there's some schools in parts of the state that that don't want an SRO. They just anti-gun, and you know, it's. I hope it's okay for them, but our SROs, if they knew our men and women, they would have one in a heartbeat. They do great, and that was important. We've allocated not enough money, but we've helped the schools to make them safer, and it's extremely, extremely important. So, and of course the Copes and the Holt family, you know, they're always in our thoughts. Davey?
We also, there were some provisions in Senate Bill 2 that was related to school safety. We created a guardian program, and this involves retired Kentucky State Troopers, honorably discharged military veterans, and other retired law enforcement officers, could be federal or local. And these will be armed individuals that will be on our campuses. And most of those I don't have any issue with, and not that I have any disrespect for the military. Being in the military and being an SRO, two different worlds. And there are really no parameters on any training or experience from the military veteran. And I didn't vote for this bill in the initial stages because of that, because I fear that one of these retired folks are going to be on a campus, they're going to be by themselves, they're not going to have any arrest power, and I fear what's going to happen in the situation they're going to be put in, liability that might arise from that. And but other states are doing it. I think Florida does it. I think there are several states that have done that, and it's worked, and maybe I'm being overly cautious, but that's just I would rather us fund more true SRO positions than put armed civilians within the school systems, even though they did bump up the training involved, and I did end up finally voting for the bill in the very end, but that concerns me, and I think we're at the point where I feel like we're going a little bit too far on those things, and I like the idea of officers that have been on the streets, that understand situations from that perspective, and had the full SRO training. Not every police officer can be an SRO. Whole different skill set that's needed, but that's just where we are, and I think that's a state effort to try to make the schools as safe as we can. But we're kind of getting on that edge on what's really the best thing to do, and I fear that some situations are going to arise that are going to put these folks in a really bad situation where they have to act to protect someone, and somebody's going to end up getting hurt, and that's the concern with that. But that was something that passed, and also more of a focus on the mental health and counseling in our schools, which this bill also does.
This next question is for any of our commissioners. How do you feel about the installation of roundabouts?
Get them, Marty.
All right. I don't know if I'd even hardly been in office when this come about. And being gung-ho, I went on Channel 6 and talked about which everybody I'd called was 100% against it, and I was too. But since then, I have changed my mind. I've been out west several places. Most of your exits, interstates out west off of the big interstates, are roundabouts. Granted, they don't have the traffic Draffenville does, but they work very well. And a lot of towns down in Tennessee have them. And I've done a roundabout on my decision. I think they will actually, it will slow down a little bit, but you will get through Draffenville quicker, I do believe, with the roundabouts, because it's gonna be a slow, steady instead of stop and go. You know, I really do believe that they will help. It'll get some taking used to. The part that get hard to get used to will be no left-hand turns, except at a roundabout. Because when you come out of Shopperama, you're not gonna be able to go left and go towards Reedland. You're gonna have to go right. There'll be a divider out like it is out in front of the mall in Paducah, if you're familiar with that. And that does stop a lot of wrecks. But, if I could, I'd like to just touch just a little bit on what you was talking about on the school, what they was talking about. I think the problem that we have in this country now as a whole is we have lost the value of life itself. People's lives don't mean what they used to. They don't put the value on that. And it goes like we're divided, like Senator Carroll said. Be polite. You can disagree and be polite. You know, you can respect. We've lost respect and we've lost the value of life, I believe, in my opinion, is what is wrong with this country. And until we get back to that, I don't see it getting any better. But, all right.
Our next question is for Mr. Kevin Spraggs. Since Marshall County voted for legal alcohol sales, what has the economic impact been? Has it increased tourism? What has the social impact been? How are the dollars from alcohol sales that go to our local government used or distributed? Have there been more or fewer alcohol-related arrests made?
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to back up and get you to repeat some of those. The impact, first of all of that money goes directly to the sheriff's department for their operations. And that number, give or take, when it's got done with budget, I think is about $450,000 a year. And that goes into roughly a $5 million budget for the sheriff's department. So it's a huge help there. And the next statement I'm gonna make, I'm gonna ask a county attorney to correct me if I'm wrong. I have asked this in the past a couple times. Have we seen any increase in alcohol-related arrest? And the answers I've received on that in the past have been no. So.
I don't, I mean, the sheriff and I might disagree.
Yeah.
I guess the sheriff and I might disagree on this. I'm basing mine on just anecdotal on what I see in the courtroom. I haven't taken any kind of scientific study or crunched the numbers by any means. Now, I know Matt in his job, he does that. He sees where things are taking place around the county and what types of activities are, so he may disagree with me. But as far as I can tell in the courtroom, pre-215, post-215, I haven't really seen a big difference.
Funny you should say that. I feel like it has increased. I did run numbers on injury accidents, fatalities. To my surprise, they're really not much of a difference since we went with on the injury accident fatalities. Our call volume has gone up. Now, is that correlation or causation? You know, there's a big argument there whether it's related to alcohol or not. We always work a lot of domestics involving alcohol, assaults. It creates a problem for law enforcement no matter what it is, and that's any kind of intoxicant. I don't care if it's alcohol or, we get into the marijuana discussion. All those things always increase problems for us. So do I think we've had an increase? Absolutely. As far as it being 100%, I can make a causation argument. I can't say that with certainty.
This next question is for any county official. How do you think Marshall County should utilize the financial opportunities of Kentucky Lake?
You're the big man, you go for it.
Well, I think our tourism that it brings in, obviously, with the boating industry part of it, fishing. We just had a huge fishing tournament recently that was a very big success. If you are on social media at all, you're seeing the big bass are back, and a lot of them. I think there were several things, personally, just my personal opinion for what that's worth. I think we had a situation that has gotten much better with the Asian carp, and then I think we had a little bit of a situation where the lake was possibly overfished for many years. And I think we've recovered from that. We had some spawning issues also thrown in there. You know, I've talked to some pro anglers about this, and there are some common opinions on that. The tourism, I can speak on this firsthand. Some people that visited here frequently, they end up buying a summer home here, then they built a new home. A lot of these homes you see around the lake anymore are weekenders. And I was telling someone about the tornado. I think if that would have happened a couple of months earlier, we could have had north of 100 fatalities. But most of those homes in the Cambridge Shores area specifically were not occupied because they're weekend residents. So the lake brings those people here, and it keeps them here, you know, to a certain extent. But you know, the fishing tournament, some of the other things that we have going on. I mean, they have some poker runs anymore on the lake, and the resorts have continued to grow and flourish. Anybody else? Yeah.
Our next question is for Councilman Farley. What are we doing to entice businesses to come to Benton?
It's a tough question. You know, we are doing it through Southwest One. That's one. You know, that's kind of aiming high, but that's looking to bring some big industry into town. We discussed several other things. Some I'm at liberty to discuss right now. Some maybe not. They're still too preliminary. But we've been discussing some things that could help us get a pretty quick turnaround on some developments around town that would bring in quite a bit more tourism. So there are some things we are currently talking about. I think it was brought up at our last meeting. It's going to be discussed a lot more. But if we can further develop our parks, I know we're upgrading all of our park equipment in H.H. Lovett Park this summer. We just got the money, got a grant for the biggest part of that. We're donating the old equipment to Hardin. They wanted it, so we thought that was a good deal. So we're trying to upgrade the facilities we have, but we've got some other ways of doing that we're kind of working through. Gonna have to do a bit of a sales pitch, I think, to get it done. But if we can, I think we could see some pretty quick turnaround. And as far as bringing in a lot of tourism plus a lot of new businesses.
This next question is for Mr. Darnold. What area of crime has increased over the past few years?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily, you could call it crime. You know, last year we talked a lot about, you know, drugs still being a problem in Marshall County, and it still is without a doubt. But the amount of cases that we see in the courtroom that involve people with serious mental health issues has grown exponentially over the last year, 2 years. It's just, and I don't know what the cause of it is. I really don't. And there may be multiple causes. You might not be able to look at the situation and be able to pinpoint it. But it kind of goes back to a little bit of what we talked about at the last town hall meeting, where I think the judiciary is going to eventually go, and this will obviously have to come in concert, working with the legislatures as far as appropriations, is more and more specialty courts. I've talked about drug court here before, and I'll sing the praises of drug court again. In fact, we've got a graduation coming up Thursday. Is that right, Judge? Yeah. And the folks who run our drug court here in Marshall and Callaway counties, they do an outstanding job. And for the most part, the people who get their diplomas and certificates from drug court in this program, we don't see back in the court system. So it is money well spent. And I think what we're going to have to look at going forward is how we can appropriate money to help those with mental health issues, because as prosecutors and judges, we're asked to fix people and fix family situations or neighbor situations when mental health is involved through the criminal lens. And that's not always easy. In fact, it's anything but easy. There's often not a good fix for it. There's often not a good situation to put them in. So that's where I think the courts and the legislature are really going to have to focus on going forward.
Thank you. Our next question is for Sheriff Hilbrick. What can be done to slow the traffic down at South Marshall Middle and South Marshall Elementary School?
Well, it's funny you should ask. We had some deputies out there last week writing tickets. We've had complaints of speeding out there quite frequently in the last few months, and so we've had the guys out there issuing citations. I think the biggest one we had was 85 in that zone about 3 days ago. So really the only thing we can do is more enforcement. Unfortunately, during that time period when school in the mornings is open, I only have 2 deputies working the road. And of course, those guys have to cover calls before they work traffic enforcement. So there's many times we just don't have the manpower to have people out there. I've had the suggestion to me to have SROs out there working the traffic, but you know, the entire ideal of these SROs is to be protecting where the children are inside the school. So I hate to remove them from that duty to put them out on the highway. Is a possibility, but I don't know what's the best use of those resources.
Thank you all. We'll now take this time to swap moderators.
I would once again like to thank everybody for coming out. My name's Ethan Morgan. My partner here is Sam Martin, and we're taking over for Caden and his partner here. If anybody has any question cards, please hold those up, and we'll have somebody come get those, and we'll read some public comments here. And if you have those, make sure and get them. And Sam, start us off.
This question is for Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. A 2023 Pew Research poll states that 87% of Americans are in favor of term limits of Congress. Would you support a call for state constitutional convention in order to amend the Constitution to establish congressional term limits?
The trick with term limits is what is the limit? And I can tell you just at a state level that it took several years just to learn the system well enough to be able to get things done. And so I think it's important that, that you have a proper length of time. Now, being in a position for 30 years, is that too long? Absolutely, it is. And in those number of years, you lose touch, and society's not the same. So I do think there should be some limits on that. I think what's debatable is how many years or how many terms. As far as calling a constitutional convention, I'm not in favor of that. There are too many things that can go wrong with one of those. There are issues that could come up that could be unintended consequences of having it. And quite honestly, as far as in the state legislature, there's not a lot of discussion about doing that, actually doing it. And the number of advocates to have a state convention is growing, and there's more pressure every year. But I've not heard anything that makes me comfortable with doing that because of the things that could possibly go wrong. And people want to do a convention for different reasons. And that's the problem when you get into that. You go in for one reason, and then other issues can be brought up, and that's when things could turn south on that. So I'm not prepared for that, to support that. But term limits, yes, depending on what those are.
All right, this next question is directed to any of our commissioners. Countywide internet access is a major problem in our county. How are you working to fix it?
It is. None of us disagree with that whatsoever. But I will say in the study that we had done, and I haven't seen the most recent one. I know they're still working on it, or maybe I just haven't seen it, one or two. But the number that was given to us was somewhere around $27 to $28 million. And you got to remember, with the county anyway, whether it's water or broadband, whatever it is, we do not own any of those companies. So we're not a utility company. So at least, with the cities, they have their own water and sewer companies. We don't have that. So we're taking your tax dollars and trying to use them effectively, but for a private utility company. So they need to have the most skin in the game, not us. So yeah, do we want to put 25% of it or 20% of it? That's fine, but they need to put the other because they're going to derive the money off of it. We get the benefit of having good internet, but it needs to work both ways. So you have to find a partner, number one, that's willing to do that. And we have several out there. And then you have to be able to have the money to do it. I mean, that $27 million is 1.5 times, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, of our entire annual budget. But we'd have to just not do anything for a year and a half to pay for all of that. So you have to just do it year after year, and it's going to take time. I'm just being honest. I think we would all say that it is going to take time. Luckily, the state has put some money out there that we can get to pay for our matches. But gosh, it would take probably $5 billion to fund all that across the state, if I had to guess. So.
This question is for Judge Executive Spraggs. What work is still going on to repair the damage done by the December 2021 tornado?
Recently, and the fiscal court funded this water project in Cambridge Shores. A lot of damage from trees being uprooted, construction equipment that has been completed in the last couple of weeks with a contractor. North Marshall still addressing a few issues out there. We're going to be paving that sometime this year. I talked to the Homeowners Association the other night. It'll be sometime after July, where we had to get the money in the budget. First of all, FEMA still owes us a little over $500,000 that I was told we'll get sometime in the next 18 months. So that paving project out there is just shy of $400,000. So we were able to put that money in the budget. So if we get reimbursed from FEMA, that'll be a pleasant surprise on that. But the paving out there still being done. I know there is some broadband going in out in that area. Most of our roads that were affected, we got those paved last year. But I guess one of the biggest things left is the paving in Cambridge Shores. All of that pretty much has been torn up really bad from construction and the water line replacement, the mains and everything. They've had to cut some of the roads, and then all the construction equipment. The roads are narrow. They'll pull their equipment off side of the road, so that's tearing up the shoulders. So it's just an ongoing issue, but I am pleasantly surprised how quickly the construction out there has progressed with the homes being replaced and all that.
All right, this question is for any county official who wants to take this one. Do you think the proposed indoor sports complex would benefit Marshall County?
Short answer, yes. I think outside of Kentucky Lake, what is the main drive for Marshall County? It's entertainment on the lake. And I think, an indoor, whether it be an indoor soccer, I've heard, make it a multi-purpose building. As far as pickleball is huge, bringing in several teams. The question is where do you put it? And the other question is how do you fund it? We're upwards of, I don't know anything about soccer, but I've got some nieces that play, and they already make comments that the Hopkinsville one is already too small for what they could use it for. So you don't want to go and replicate that knowing that we're going to run out of space quickly. From a county level, we can't, our funding mechanism can only, the one that's available right now, can only be done through the cities. It would be through the form of a restaurant tax. You would have to get Calvert or Benton on board to do something like that. And I would be open to any options we had to purchase land and help to to formulate that, but I think it would be really, and I envisioned it in Draftonville, to help that exit 47 to become like another entertainment hub. You know, we've got a great park out there. I think that spurs your second hotel. I think that spurs your next big restaurant out there. We've got the sewer out there now that would help support it. I think that's the area, but the problem is that's not in either city. You know, it would be a tall mountain to climb, but I would certainly be a hill I would be worth dying on, because I think that would be the best thing for the next decade to help us move to that next level from an economic development standpoint. Calvert's always going to be a staple, you know, from the chemical plants and industrial wise. We've got Southwest 1, you know, in my district down by South Middle. Draftonville could be that next 68 corridor of entertainment, all the way from Aurora to, you know, the McCracken County line. So.
This question is for Sheriff Philbrick, Representative Freeland, or Senator Carroll. Tennessee just passed a law that allows teachers to carry a concealed weapon. Would you be for or against such a law in Kentucky?
That's closer that way.
Go your way.
Against.
I tend to be against it. I would certainly want to talk to the schools before I ever made any kind of decision like that, but I tend to be against it. I think our SROs are the best option.
You can just tell.
Just yell it.
We'd have to be very, very well vetted for a teacher to be qualified to carry. I wouldn't say I'm 100% against that idea, but there would have to be a lot of training and, you know, background investigation and continuing education on it every year, continuing qualification on shooting. You know, our guys go to the range at least 4 times a year to qualify. And, you know, that would be something that would be a huge responsibility, but I do think could be allowed, but it just needs a lot of vetting. Now that the mic's here, I'm done.
Well, I would, it wasn't directed to me, but I would echo what Matt said and what Chris and Danny said. I would tend to be against it, not because I don't want our teachers to be able to defend themselves, but I just look at, for example, my wife, her size, and I look at some of the guys on the football team, she could easily be overpowered. I mean, that's obvious. If you look at some of the football players and look at her, they could easily overpower her and take a gun away from her. So that would be the scenario that would scare me the most, is that you're just introducing an opportunity that might not otherwise be there. So that would be my fear.
All right, so as these public comments come in, we are going to read all these first before we get back to regularly scheduled questions, as these are our top priority. This one is directed to Representative Freeland as well as Senator Carroll. What are your thoughts on property taxes? Should they go down for people starting at age 62 versus 65? And also, should the car tax be eliminated after a vehicle is already 10 years old?
Now, what is the question? I was hoping Danny would answer that. I saw the 10 years.
Yeah, should a car tax be eliminated after a vehicle is 10 years old? And then should property taxes go down for people starting at age 62 versus 65?
I wouldn't be against any of it. I hate paying them too. But a lot of that money, really most all of that money, doesn't go to the state. Most of it goes to the county, to the schools, to every other agency. A small portion, about the same amount that goes to the county, maybe goes to the state. So,
As far as real estate taxes?
yeah, for property taxes. So those other entities would need to weigh in on that, but I don't like them myself, but I understand the need for some taxes.
And there was a bill that was filed this session that would have done away with property tax at age 20, at 65, 25, at age 65, and that, I don't think that bill made very much progress, but we already have the homestead exemption where a certain amount of the value is already exempt. And, you know, and as far as taxes on vehicles, a 10-year-old vehicle is still worth quite a bit of money these days, and the biggest problem is the value on vehicles, used vehicles has skyrocketed, which caused those taxes to go up. And I know for a couple years, we during COVID, when that first started happening, we put some limits on that so they would not go up so high. But keep in mind that all that revenue that comes in, that's whatever the revenue source might be that comes into the state, that's money that in large parts distributed back out to the cities and counties that allow local governments to do a lot of the things that they're able to do, since they're limited on the tax revenue they can generate because they can't really do a lot of local taxation through unless they do a restaurant tax. But a lot of talk about local option sales tax for local governments to do that to try to raise revenue. So as long as the money's invested properly, that should be the priority. And if we're not investing that money properly, then people need to rethink who they're voting for.
I assume this is a general question. Why do we not do away with state tax and increase our sales tax so everyone that does business with Kentucky has to pay to help run our state?
That's exactly what we're doing. Because we're doing away with the income tax, and because of the spending, the controlled spending that we made this session, we should be on course 2026 to drop the income tax down to 3.5%, down from 6%. So the ultimate goal is to do away with the income tax in our Commonwealth. And what you've seen happen, and you've seen in the last two budget cycles, hundreds of millions of dollars being given to cities and counties, to schools, all different areas where investments were made. And sometimes I feel like at this point we're becoming a grant agency. We spend a lot of time not working on policy, but deciding where funding's going from the state because so much money is coming in. Keep in mind, that's not going to last because the income tax is going to eventually go down to zero, and we're going to be relying on the sales tax to do that. But consumption-based taxation, that has been the plan for several years, and it's working. And I think there are two reasons you see the revenue the surplus in revenue that we're seeing right now. One, it's because we have gone to consumption-based and we have broadened that tax base. That's great, it works. The other part of that is not so good, and it's what I think has really been one of the main drivers. We are taxing more consumables, consumption-based, but the prices on all of those things has skyrocketed. And that comes out of our pockets to cover that. So it has generated a lot of revenue for the state, but it has come at a price. And those are the two reasons why the state has so much surplus revenue, because the expanded tax base and just the fact that prices on things that are being taxed has skyrocketed.
All right, this question is also directed to Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. In 2020, there was a congressional redistricting in which Region 1 fish-hooked all the way to Frankfort in the middle of the state. Do you believe this represents Kentucky's constituents? And if not, is there any discussion to bring the fishhook further south?
There's no discussion to change it. It did go to the Supreme Court, and I think it'd be the next census would be the next time that it can be changed. But it was kind of a mess before the House and Senate did the mapping, but I think it's probably better now than it was. Even though you look at it, it does look odd, but I think it is what it is. I didn't have anything to do with it though. So. But it did go to the Supreme Court.
And I actually did not vote in favor of that. And the reason I didn't is because it's going to be much more difficult from someone in our part of the state to be elected to Congress now. And I don't like that. The values, when you go from Frankfort all the way down to Fulton, two different worlds. And and we want our congressman to be someone that knows our area and focuses on our area. Not that Congressman Comer is a great guy; he does a great job. I'm not worried about him at all. It's those who may follow that concern me. And, you know, there's more of a vote going further east. And it's going to be more difficult for us to get not that I'm ever have any plans of doing that, so that's not where that comes from. But that's what concerns me, and I wasn't in favor of it. And, you know, there were reasons that happened. And every time we have a census and they do the redistricting, depending on which party is in charge in Frankfurt, those decisions are made. It's gerrymandered to try to support that party in reelection to get the most Democrats or the most Republicans elected. That's the reality of it. And, you know, people can deny it all they want, but that's the reality. It happened when the Democrats were in charge, and now it's happening when Republicans are in charge.
Say, question from the audience. I recently visited Louisiana and spoke with the CEO of an organization that works with at-risk youth. She mentioned that Louisiana doesn't provide mental health counseling for those with Medicaid. I know in seeing Kentucky now important our counselors are in schools. She said Kentucky has this because we are a quote-unquote purple state. They're red in Louisiana. Do you support that program regardless of our government? Sorry.
Yeah, Kentucky is moving towards establishing a mental health waiver, which is through Medicaid, and we spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the area of mental health and putting counselors in schools. That's probably the thing over substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment over the recent years, that a couple of the things we've invested in the heaviest as a Commonwealth. I had a bill this past session, and hopefully next session this will happen, to, you all know we've had a lot of issues with juvenile detention centers throughout the state. We've had riots. There was a young woman that was raped. We had a mentally ill young woman that lived in a cell in a detention center, often naked, sleeping in feces. They could not place her anywhere because she was so violent. Had a bill that would have created a mental health focused detention center that would have been built at Central State Hospital in a focus on the most acute kids that are mostly involved, DJJ involved, justice involved. So that, I feel certain that's going to happen. We were all in agreement and worked very closely with the executive branch to come up with that plan. So on the extreme end, we're working on those issues within DJJ. There's more of a focus and more funding in our schools on mental health. With that mental health waiver, if that comes about, folks that are on Medicaid will have more funding available for that. And the biggest struggle has been the availability of quality mental health counseling, quality programs. These places are popping up all over this state, but yet we're not really sure about the quality, and we're just now starting to get a hold of that to really be able to evaluate each one of these locations and the quality of services that are provided, and making sure that they're good investments that are actually going to make a difference.
This question is also from the audience. Why would we have 6 guys out on 68 patching when less than a week they are back grinding what they patched? If it was going to be weeks or months, I can see that. However, in less than a week seems like a waste of money for the road as well as a waste of manpower.
I really should give this to these two guys, to be honest with you, because Highway 68 is a state highway. I know there's a road plan. You know, the state does a road plan. 68 is in the road plan to be in some portions widened and completely resurfaced over time from McCracken County all the way through Marshall County. And so I get it, but at the same time, if it's not in that road bill, it's not going to be paved in this year. Would y'all agree?
sometimes you have some holes that just have got to be done, no matter if it's just gonna be a week. Somebody drives through there and hits it and runs a rim or busts a tire on their car. I mean, yes, it's, you think it's kinda, if it's just a small one, it'd be different, but there are some big ones that we had, like I said, we had a really rough winter on our roads, so. I mean, I don't know where you're talking about, but I'm assuming surely that's probably what it is, that there was just some that just had to have some attention no matter what, even though they was coming today to do this.
All right, this question is for Councilman Kevin Farley. What is going to be done with the former Senior Citizens Building in Benton?
You said for the senior citizen building in Benton?
Yes, sir.
As far as the building itself, I actually cannot answer that. I don't know. We haven't had conversations on it as of late. I know that we're opening up up in the park, we're opening up the Joe Creason Center, and there are senior citizens that are getting together up there. Every so often, I'm not sure if it's multiple times a week, to play games, to walk, and to do other things. But as far as the old building that's down by the golf course, not sure if I have heard of any future plans for it right off the top of my head. We're just basically using the Joe Creason Center at the current time.
I'll speak to that in just a second. We have met with an architect on that building. We're applying for a CDBG grant to hopefully get funding to totally renovate that facility, but we're in the early stages of it, and it is a 100% grant if we do receive it, and we went all in, applied for the $750,000 amount. Sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but the building needs a roof, all new HVAC, the inside. I think that will get the facility where it needs to be, where it can be enjoyed for many years to come.
This question is for Jason Darnold. If you could improve one thing in our county related to your job, what would it be and why?
Ooh. Anything in the county.
Related to your job.
Related, okay. There's a qualifier there, Monty. Okay, so no replacing people, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Related to my job, well, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but again, I would like to see more specialty courts, more money allocated for drug courts. And I say this, and I don't mean to be condescending or anything like that, so please don't take me wrong on this, but I think a lot of folks out there have the impression that, okay, a person is before a judge, the judge can do whatever he or she thinks is necessary to get that person where they need to go. And that's just not the case. We may all look at somebody and say, well, that person needs to go here, that person needs to go there. But the judge and the prosecutors that are involved in that case, we have to have statutory authority to do that. And a lot of times, if that person doesn't fit this criteria, then that program's out. Or this criteria, then that program's out. And then we're left with just being, we just got the criminal prosecution, that's it. And that's really not what that person needs. I was in court 2 weeks ago with the young lady with her court-appointed attorney, and it was obvious that she's not a criminal. She has severe mental issues going on. She was homeless. She had nowhere to go. She didn't fit into any really distinct criteria as far as mental health programs go. There was nowhere for her to go. So we're looking at each other in the back there and saying, well, do we want to cut her loose today? If we do cut her loose, where's she going to go? She's going to get victimized by somebody. She's going to probably steal out of necessity to eat. She's going to end up on the side of the road, beaten or raped or whatever. And at that point, it's just, well, the safest place for her is in jail. And that's unfortunate, but that's what we're left with a lot of times. And so I really, really want to see more specialty courts and different options for these people. And that's not easy. That's not going to be an easy task because you're talking about an overhaul. So it's going to take people who are a lot smarter than I am to come up with how that's going to take place.
Sheriff Philbrick, this question is directed towards you. Will we get more security outside of businesses due to the recent increase in stalking?
Well, I don't know there's necessarily a recent increase in stalking. Obviously, we conduct patrols 24/7 every day. As far as increased security, no, I don't see that we're going to increase our patrols in that area. But to be honest, I'm not sure we have a stalking issue.
This question is for Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. How do you propose schools enforce House Bill 383, banning cell phones and the use of them in school if it is made into law?
I can't remember that bill.
I don't see that being made into law.
Yeah.
I can't see that ever going, that's a local issues that the school needs to make decisions on, not the state. I don't even remember hearing about that bill.
I do remember something about schools, the school board's developing a policy related to that, but I don't think it was just banning. I know they're banned TikTok, and but I don't know if it's an outright ban on cell phones. I don't know of.
All right, this question is directed towards Senator Carroll. Senator Carroll, you sponsored Senate Bill 198 about nuclear energy. Do your constituents endorse or consent to the use of nuclear energy here in Marshall County?
That is actually part of the bill, and I would love to talk for hours on this, something that I'm very passionate about and I've learned a lot about the last few years. The bill basically establishes a nuclear authority within the Commonwealth, and that authority is attached to the University of Kentucky. And the purpose of that authority, there is a board for the authority that is made up of various stakeholders throughout the state, utilities, academia, local government would be represented on this authority. And really the first major step in what the responsibilities of the authority is to educate the Commonwealth. Many people in our Commonwealth think that nuclear energy, they think about Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, and it's not the same. The Generation 4 reactors, completely different. The fuels are different. The coolants in nuclear reactors are different. The size, the designs, and it's much more safer than it used to be. And there's not a doubt in my mind at some point in this world that nuclear energy will be the primary energy source for baseload energy in our world. And there are breakthroughs being made in nuclear fusion. The reactors that we have now is nuclear fission, and that's splitting of atoms. Fusion is the joining together of atoms to create heat. It's the power of the sun, it's the power of the stars, and it is, they refer to it as the holy grail of energy. We're going to see that happen, and we're going to see nuclear fission being commercially viable in the decades to come. And that excites me because we are in historical times when it comes to energy. And this authority is responsible for identifying the job needs that we will have in the Commonwealth for a nuclear ecosystem. It will identify the educational needs that we have. Communities will have the ability to be designated as nuclear-ready communities. And this is not just for reactors. This is for the industry that comes along with this power source, whether it be manufacturing or whatever it might be. And so I think it's something our state can take advantage of. We are getting nationwide attention on this. I was just telling Monty I'm going to Washington State next week to speak to a group about nuclear energy, and I have another engagement next month in Louisville where some people are coming in. And the purpose of this was to get Kentucky on the forefront of it and not get left behind. You all know the struggles we had, I think last year when we had the rolling blackouts, and we're trying to be really careful about controlling our energy generation within the Commonwealth to make sure that we have enough energy. and we're not closing coal plants down too fast. But there are 9 coal plants right now that have been identified to be eligible for transition to nuclear, which is great. And so this is where we've got to stay on top of this so we don't get left behind. And, there are jobs to be had with this. There's industry. They predict that by 2050, with the energy demands in our nation at this point, with all the data centers that are coming up that are huge users of power, electric vehicles, they predict that it'll take over 300 nuclear reactors to power us by 2050, and that's how fast the demands are growing. Kentucky has taken an all-of-the-above energy approach. That's fossil fuels, it's renewables, it's nuclear. And it's one thing that I've worked on that has been very much bipartisan, and I worked with the executive branch putting this bill together. We had a working group last summer that made up of all the stakeholders, and there's a product that we came out with. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm very excited that Kentucky is getting on the forefront, and that bill passed unanimously, both chambers. The governor vetoed it, but he vetoed it only because he didn't have the authority to decide who was going to be on the board. The representatives, the companies, the utilities would be making those decisions, and I felt like that was the best way to do it because they would need to put someone on there who is expert in that area or has some knowledge, not a political appointment. And that's the only reason he vetoed it. They were kind enough to let me know he was going to veto it and explain why. But it was very much an effort through the executive and the legislative branch. And if you're not comfortable with nuclear, I would suggest do some research. Next-gen reactors, read up on it. Bill Gates, TerraPower, they're about to build a reactor in Wyoming that is a natrium, sodium-based, very safe. And there are reactors now. Dow Chemical, and I promise I'll stop, I'm sorry. Dow Chemical is building 4 small modular reactors in a chemical plant in Texas. They will power their own plant. This will be power that's behind the meter, and they will be able to run that plant 24/7 with small modular reactors on site. And so that's what we're seeing, and where we're going to start seeing these large industry generating their own power with either micro reactors or small modular reactors, depending on the need. And then any excess power they have, they can sell to the grid. Those are the new things that are happening in many different areas. And Paducah is going to be a part of this. The waste that we have at the USEC site is referred to as the tails. There's technology being developed that will be able to enrich the uranium in that product that is waste right now to power some of these next-gen reactors. Bill Gates says there's enough fuel in Paducah right now to fuel this country for about 400 years. So it's pretty amazing what's happening, and Kentucky's going to be a part of that. And I apologize. It's just something I'm very passionate about.
All right. This question is for Jason Darnell. How would the process for establishing specialty courts work?
It would be a joint effort. You would have to involve the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. So, first of all, there would have to be, allocation of funding, and that's just an issue of, fighting for dollars. And my previous comments were by no means meant to disparage what our legislature has done or has not done, because I think we have made great strides in that area. But I'm talking about the specialty courts, and you're talking about an overhaul where you can give us more options. So to take it for mental health just as one example, right now we have basically 2 avenues that we can tell people, okay, if you're facing this situation, it might be a guardianship. If it's this situation, it might be an involuntary hospitalization. But if it doesn't fit either one of those roads, there's not really anything that we have. We just need more options. But that would be, like I said, it's going to take people who are smarter than I am, so you're going to have to involve the mental health community. You're going to have experts come in and say, here's what you need if you want to have a mental health court. And this is not breaking new ground. There are mental health courts out there in different states. There may even be some in Kentucky as a temporary basis. I'm not sure, but it can be done, and that's but it takes a joint effort, and it takes money and everybody being on the same page.
All right, this question is for any of the commissioners. There's a noticeable difference in the cleanliness of roads between Marshall County and the surrounding areas. Why doesn't Marshall County have a trash cleanup crew? Every surrounding county has a Class D inmate work crew to help clean up the trash. The state offers funding for jails to do so, so money is not a problem. Why does Marshall County not have a trash cleanup crew?
My understanding that is the problem. Is it in the shortage, Matt, of? All right, here.
We had it before COVID, and now we don't, so I don't know the answer.
We have as I think Commissioner McGuire alluded to earlier, pay has been an issue, and we have a problem with staffing at the jail, and that requires the jail to provide supervision. So one of the jailers is going to have to go out with them. And, you know, there's also, I know there's other counties doing it, but we have to have the staffing to do it. And if they're willing to furnish the money for the cleanup, I wish they would hire a company that does that and clean it up. That's my opinion on that, and I've got a very firm opinion on that. If we had the resources, you know, we would. And that had been done in the past, but things have changed with inflation and pay scales and all of that, and we don't have the manpower to do it. So if they have the money, I would like to see them provide the cleanup, because it is an eyesore, period.
Do any of the commissioners have an opinion on that?
I agree. I mean, it would be, the way I understand it, at one time, the Transportation Department had would put that out for bid versus whatever way that they're doing it currently. So that makes more sense to me, because the majority of what you're seeing is on state highways or federal highways, interstates, not the county roads, because on our own county roads, we are maintaining those. So we're talking about state highways. So it should be state money.
This question is for Judge Spraggs. Would there be an advantage to merging county and city governments, and is there a plan for Draftonville to be annexed by either Calvert or Benton?
I've heard no plan of Draftonville being annexed. I can't see that happening anytime in the future. You know, with any mergers, there could be advantages, but with merging, there has to be cost savings. And with county or city government, our biggest expense is our labor. I think our county budget, it exceeds 50% of the budget. So there's a lot of moving parts there. I don't see that ever happening for a lot of reasons.
All right, this public question is directed towards Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. Oregon recently recriminalized small amounts of drugs due to Measure 110's failure to combat the state's rising overdose numbers through rehabilitation. How can Kentucky learn from their mistakes to address its own addiction/overdose crisis?
You know, I think at this point, we're kind of in the midst of a transition on how we address addiction, where, you know, used to it was all about the criminal act of possession or trafficking, and now we have moved more away from that, and there is more of a focus on treatment. You know, we're legalized marijuana for medical reasons, struggle with that. And there, you know, I think there's, on the marijuana side of it, there's still a big push to take the next step to legalize recreational use. You know, Kentucky is one of the worst states for addiction, and there are numerous treatment centers popping up all over the state. And I feel that it's very much a local issue, and it would be great as as Jason was talking about, as a local court system to have the services available in the community. And I think these issues need to be approached community by community. They know where the problems are, and if they had access to the resources, I think the results would be better. And, you know, we need to focus on the supply and those who are dealing and stiffing penalties. We have kind of made a 180-degree turn in Frankfurt over recent years. We've been all about second chances, people not going to jail, and, you know, not wanting to expand crime or expand penalties. And if you look at House Bill 5, I think it was, the Safer Kentucky Act, you know, we're turning back, and we're going back towards harsher penalties in a lot of areas, not so much on the substance abuse side, but in other areas with violent offenses, you know, when more where people are hurt, carjacking, early release of violent offenders, those types of things. I think we're starting to tighten down on that. But treatment is where we're headed. I feel that treatment needs to be more localized, and the local courts need to have access to the treatment, and the communities need to be involved. The churches need to be involved, and you just have to attack that one person at a time. And the state's not going to solve that issue. It's the people within that individual person's life that's going to make the difference. And I say that. My brother-in-law, I think he's been clean about 10 years now. He was on the verge of death. Before he got clean, the last time I saw him, I walked into his apartment, told my wife to wait at the door because I knew I was going to walk in and he was going to be dead. And because he had a good support system, he's clean. He's been clean for several years. And at one point, didn't want him in my house. I had arrested him before when I was in law enforcement. And today, he's one of my favorite people. And that's how you do it, one person at a time. People getting involved, individuals getting involved.
This question is for any county official. Do you feel we need public transportation, and how would you go about acquiring this resource for our community?
It would be just my opinion, but I think that would need to be done through the private sector. As far as a company would need to come in, cab company, transit company would need to come in, do a need study, and then go from there. But as far as us funding a transportation, I wouldn't see that would be a priority with all the other things that we've got going on in the near future at least.
This question is for Councilman Kevin Farley. Benton is not a walk/run friendly town. Sidewalks are sparse and lighting at night is poor. Is there any initiative to improve the sidewalks within the city?
There are. We've got two on the list right now on Walnut Street and on Ash. Both of those now, they're not quick projects. It could be up to 2 years to actually finish both the sidewalks and the lighting. But that's something we are slowly working through. The Mayfield Highway, I live out Mayfield Highway, that's another area that I think is an area of concern. It's a safety hazard that we need to add some, but there's some logistical issues with the drop-offs and all around the road. But that is something we're looking at every year, is improving sidewalks, at least a few every year in our budget.
This question is for any Marshall County official or City of Benton. What steps have been taken in establishing any guidelines for the inevitable coming of dispensaries for medical marijuana?
I can speak for Benton. I was out of town, but I heard that we voted in the city of Benton for a dispensary. It can either be put on the election, as I understand it, or the council can vote for it. And again, I was in Chicago, but it was voted for to put a dispensary in Benton. And I think the main logic was if you had people that required medical marijuana, had a legit prescription, why make them drive to Murray, Calvert, or Mayfield, Paducah, or somewhere else to get that? So that's how the city of Benton handled it. I do know that.
This question is for Sheriff Matt Hilbrick. Due to the fact of Marshall County not having homeless shelters, how will we deal with legislation to arrest homeless people?
Well, to my knowledge, we don't have any legislation to arrest homeless people at the moment. Typically, what we have to do, currently we take them to Paducah. They have a homeless shelter there. They've been good with assisting us, whenever we have a need, and we will transport them. Sheriff's Department takes them and deliver them there. Other than that, that would have to be up to the county as far as building kind of homeless shelter, I guess. Judge Braggs maybe will speak to that.
Going back to that cannabis question, I don't think you're going to see a marijuana dispensary on every corner. I don't think that's going to happen. Number one, I don't think the market will support that. If you remember when we first went wet, there was a lot of liquor stores that popped up, but there's not that many liquor stores left. I mean, the market just did not support that many businesses. So, and I've taken a look at the legislation and the regulations a lot in the past 2 weeks because we've got some laws that are going into effect in July. So that's just a couple months away. And we're actually going to be discussing this in the fiscal court in the next few meetings. And I've sent the commissioners some proposed ordinances as far as what we can do on a local level. But when you're talking about people applying to be able to grow the marijuana or to process the marijuana into the CBD gummies and dispensaries, I mean, there's going to be a substantial monetary involvement in there. So you are not going to see just some random guy coming off the street and next thing you know, he's got a dispensary. That's not going to happen. And as far as the grows go, you're also not going to be going down Mayfield Highway or out in my area in Harvey and see marijuana growing. They're going to be indoor grows. The state has done a fantastic job, and the cabinet has done, in my opinion, a very good job of making sure that these facilities are secure. And that for the most part, they're kind of hidden. They're going to be hidden from view. So you're not going to be driving down Main Street in Benton and seeing a neon pot leaf in one of the businesses. It's just not going to happen that way. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. As if I could tell you as a citizenry, I think it's all going to work out. I think the market will help in that effect. But we can take steps to restrict locations of these facilities. The statute already prohibits any of the facilities from being 1,000 feet from a school. I think the fiscal court is going to look at an additional restriction as it comes to churches and places of worship. I've already got a draft ready for them to take a look at. But again, those are issues that we're going to talk about. But the state really did a really good job, in my opinion. So bravo to Chris and Danny for that, and the cabinet for putting into place some really good regulations on that.
All right, Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland, do you think transgender people should be allowed to play sports with their identified gender? And if so, or if not, how prominent of an issue really is transgender participation in sports, despite what is portrayed in the media?
We had a lot of discussion about this and the whole transgender issue, from conversion, I mean, you name it. A lot of time has been taken up on those issues. As far as competitive sports, do I think a biological male should be allowed to compete with females? Absolutely not. And when you get in, with the younger kids, when it's not so much of a competition and they're learning, that shouldn't be an issue there. I mean, it's, that's pretty common, and it was before all this transgender issue came up. But when it gets to the level where it's competitive, then I think that's where we have to make the separation. It's not fair to a biological female who has worked her entire life towards something just to not get a medal or not get a scholarship or whatever because a biological male who physically is dominant in most cases that we have seen. Are those numbers huge? Not necessarily, no, but but it is happening, and we know it's happening, and it's not as far as the competition, it's not fair to that female. The same way it's not fair for a biological male to be okay to go into a female bathroom with a biological female. It's just, there are lines to be drawn with all of that. But what's important is that we draw those lines, but we can do it respectfully. We can have the disagreement, but we can do it respectfully. And, I think for those of us who don't really understand that and we don't want our kids exposed to that, as far as athletics, we don't want a biological male competing with the females. We express that, in our case, we pass laws that address that. But it doesn't mean we have to hate those who are identified as transgendered or who make that conversion. They're people. And we can do what we need to do, and we can do it respectfully, and that's on both sides. And again, that goes back to the problem. So many people on the left and who are all pro this, they force that on it, and they cross lines that leads to the right pushing back harder. And that's where a lot of this division comes about, and one side back and forth, and that's where we are with this. And one particular bill last year, 150, that ended up being passed that had to do with the transgender issue, and it would, there was an amendment that I had on a bill that would allow hormones to delay puberty in a male or a male female who may be thinking about transitioning that are in a crisis, a mental health crisis, just to extend puberty for a certain amount of time. We do it all the time. Doctors give medication to kids who begin puberty too soon. It's common. And that was a big issue. And I didn't vote for the bill because I felt like those kids, their parents, their doctors, in those cases when it's life-threatening, they should be able to have that decision. They should be able to make that decision. And I was evil at that point because I took the time to think about a kid. And if it's one kid, and I know there's one kid because I talked to a pediatrician at the University of Louisville that told me about this kid. That's what I mean about people getting left out in all of this, innocent people getting left out. But we've got to stop pushing our values on other people so much. We've got to protect each other's rights. It's not one-sided. It can't be. And when we try to make it one-sided, that's how we get where we are today. And how are we going to turn this country around and unite this country again? I don't know. It's going to take somebody at the very top, and that's somebody I haven't seen yet. But I hope that person comes along soon.
I'll just add, I won't reiterate much, but I am against it, obviously, and voted against it last year before last, I can't remember. But I think women's sports should be protected. I mean, they've worked hard. They've spent years to get Title IX to where it is. You look at female basketball, softball, all these great sports, gymnastics, track, and the records that they have worked hard to achieve and to earn. We saw a newscast, my wife and I, yesterday. As a father, it was in high school. His daughter was competing for I don't know if it's a state championship or what, but there was a male that got in the race, and the father said that his time as a freshman, he said, my time when I was a runner and as a freshman, he said, I would break every state record in this event. So it's just different. And I think we should honor our young ladies that have sports that have earned this chance and are really great sports. I mean, great athletes, and they deserve that. So I am definitely against men competing as women. However you phrase that. I don't mean to be insensitive.
Thank you. This question is for Judge Braggs. What has been your biggest accomplishment so far and your biggest challenge?
Biggest accomplishment, I would say, uniting this county again and its elected officials to where it should be. Very proud of that. I hope they agree with me. Second part of that question was what? I'm sorry.
Biggest challenge that you faced?
Biggest challenge. I guess it would be the continuous financial challenges, that we face, wanting to do things and trying to have the funding to do it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Representative Freeland and Senator Carroll. We lobbied them to get us some help with a failing waste treatment plant in Aurora, and they were able to get that put in the state budget. And, really appreciate that. But it's just, it's constantly something coming out of left field that, needs some additional finances, whether it be broadband, water. I'll say this court is, I think, unanimous in this, that we are dedicated to continuing to move forward with the water projects and broadband. We have a water project now that I'm anticipating be done in the next 90 days. That was roughly a $6 million project in West Marshall area, Oak Level. The broadband project we have going now, I think the county's portion of that was about $700,000. We just put another $365,000, I think, in this current budget for that. So trying to pay the bills and continue to do things that will put us in a situation to be able to grow the county from an infrastructure point is that's a moving target constantly.
All right, this question is for any county official who wants to take it. How can we make our community more successful while retaining the small town charm and values? And what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Marshall County? And what are the steps forward to fix this challenge?
Is that I'll take this?
I'm glad you spoke up.
Give me the first part of that again.
How can we make our community more successful while retaining the small town charm and values? And what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Marshall County? And what are the steps forward to fix this challenge?
I think we've always done that. I mean, I don't feel that we've lost any of that small town values whatsoever. So bringing in large businesses into Southwest One or Calvert or wherever it is should not affect that, in my opinion. This county's been here for a long time, and we have deep roots, each of us do in this county, and that's what matters. We pass that on to our children. Your parents do the same thing. Now the key is, are you going to come back here? And after college or a trade, whatever it may be, do you see what you need here to be able to come back and live here? And that's our jobs, is to ensure, the soccer complex, whatever, indoor complex, that's what that's about too. That generates, economic development. There are businesses that want to know this library. They want to know that you have facilities like this before they bring their company here and potentially have people move here and live here. They want quality of life, and that's what we offer. And it's our duty each and every day to ensure that. And I know it weighs on each of us, I'm sure, on a daily basis of what are we doing to ensure that. So I think we give that back to you all, and you have to tell us, are we not doing what we need to do to be able to get you to come back here? Listen, I want my girls back here. Now, I'll be okay with them leaving for the 4 years that it takes to go to college, but I want them back here. I think we all do as parents, grandparents, whatever it may be.
And what's the biggest problem facing Marshall County, in your opinion?
Wow. It's our representative and senator, That's a great question. I don't know. I hate to be Mr. Cheery up here, but I'm so.
Kevin Farley wants to chime in.
Okay, let Kevin Farley chime in.
I know one thing, if you look around the square of Benton, that's the center of town, and we're working with a company now. We've contracted with a company called Retail Strategies, and we are looking at either the city purchasing a property that is not being used or vacant, or finding a use and finding a renter, leaser, buyer for one of the buildings around the square. You drive around some of the squares in our area, Paris, Tennessee, comes to mind. Other squares in the area, ours pales by comparison. And you can judge a lot by a small town by the square and the quality of shops that are around it. And that's something that we are actively working on and spending considerable amount of money on to try to improve Benton. Yes.
This question is also for Mr. Kevin Farley. Driving into Benton from Draftonville is, simply put, not pretty. One business owner has stated that it is a poor first impression of the town and would like to know what is being considered to clean up this section of the town.
I'm assuming they're driving in on 641, not the interstate.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not
maybe.
sure. I'm not sure either. That, of course, you go through a large area that was hit hard by the tornado. You go by the Forge property there in the S curve, and it looks like a bomb went off. And so I don't know if they're talking about that area or what. I can't think of another area other than the part that was hit by the tornado, really. That would be the interstate. Really looks like just pretty much any other interstate.
This is for any county official. Do we have any plans to add any bike lanes, additional bike lanes, anywhere in the county?
That is something the fiscal court has not discussed, and it's not been even brought to our attention until now, as far as I know. Yeah.
I have no idea within the county where you would do bike lanes. Yeah, there are some county roads that you wouldn't have enough room.
This question is for Senator Carroll and Representative Freeland. In hindsight, we have learned many lessons from COVID. When a future pandemic occurs, there could be a greater loss of life if it again becomes political. What lessons have been learned to better keep people safe, and how will you approach your response?
I think we solved a lot of that by the emergency powers that allowed the schools and allowed our local communities to work on those decisions. So a lot of that has been answered, and I think you learn from COVID. I mean, we've never had anything like that in my lifetime, probably in your lifetime. So I think you learn from that. Maybe certainly the schools closing for 2 years we've seen some of the impact of that, and a lot of things are still remaining impacted from that. But I think we would handle it better this next time because COVID still exists, and I think people are okay with dealing with how things are and just being careful. I don't think putting stickers where you gotta stand. I hope that never comes back. A plexiglass, I don't know how much that really helped anything, other than make people maybe feel safer.
All right, this public comment also coincides directly with the question we have for Senator Carroll as well as Representative Freeland. Approximately 9% of Kentucky students are educated in a private school, 3.5% in homeschool, while approximately 88% are educated in Kentucky's public schools. Our state government controls our public schools, and a simple Google search as to why young people don't want to enter into the profession of teaching states poor pay, benefits, and misleading or false political attacks. So what legislation will you propose that attracts better qualified people to the profession of education? The public comment said, my son wants to become a high school teacher. Can you tell me the shape of the teacher retirement system? Will it be viable when he is ready to retire in approximately 30 years?
Last question first, absolutely. We have poured millions and millions of extra dollars above what we're statutorily required to contribute, and that's been every year since I've been in the Senate. And that system is in best shape of any of our pension systems of the large size. I think probably the state police, but they are much smaller systems. So the pension system is not going to be an issue, and it is on course to be very sound in the future, and we continue to invest millions every year. We have given the school districts funding the last 2 budget cycles, and we leave it to the school districts on what they do as far as pay. There are lots of issues with that, looking at the cost of living and in different communities throughout the state, and how would you actually, what would be fair? Because if the state contributed to get each school at the same level, that creates inequities within itself. So the decisions were made to give the money to the school districts and let them decide what raises they give. And ultimately, for me, we need to look at what the surrounding states, where their pay scales are, how they do things, and we need to be competitive. That's what it boils down to. That's what I do in the nonprofit that I run. I look at what the market is, and we adjust our salaries based on that. And that's what we need to do as a state, but it's not that simple because of the different school districts. Some districts have higher revenue than others. They're able to contribute more funding. But, the teaching profession itself, I think that's a two-way street. And I think, we need to be more of a cohesive partnership. And we work very well with superintendents on that side of it in the school systems. But, there has just been a constant battle between the legislature and teachers ever since I've been there. We all have the same goals. But, oftentimes from our end, it just never seems like we do enough. And that's very frustrating on our end. And, I think prospective teachers listen more to other teachers than they do what we're doing. And I think it's those teachers who can make the biggest difference in turning things around. We have made lots of changes where we allow alternative certification for teachers, where you don't have to have all the education that you used to have in the past. There are just different paths to become a teacher now to try to help create more teachers within the state, and it's still an ongoing issue. But the pension system is sound, the pay is increasing, and if you don't like the pay in one district, you can look at other districts where that pay is more substantial. And but it often boils down to quality of life for the families, and there's quite a difference in pays even in our local district with some of the schools. And but I think the most important thing is just we've got to start working together, and we've got to mend those fences, and we've got to focus on the kids and the quality of education, improving our scores, because we all agree we're not where we need to be as far as educating our kids. And I'm very much a pro advocate in early childhood education, that we need to invest more in that area, and that needs to become as important as secondary, post-secondary, primary, post-secondary, in the way we invest those funds, and I think that can make a big difference too. But It's going to take all of us to change the culture, change the environment within teaching to recruit more teachers into that profession. I mean, I've got a director at Easter Seals that she left the school system to come work at Easter Seals because she just couldn't deal with the environment anymore. And that's a lot more than just the legislator. The schools, the lack of control that we have of students often, the lack of parental involvement in dealing with these issues. And so there's a gamut of issues that we need to address to make that environment better, to be able to recruit more teachers into the profession. There is no better profession than being a teacher. I would not be here if it weren't for teachers in the Marshall County School District many, many years ago. Not a doubt in my mind. And so I value our teachers, and all of us do. We may not always agree on policy issues, but we all value the teachers, and we all agree that we've got to do what's best for the kids.
Okay, thank you. I think this concludes our Marshall County AP Government Town Hall. We'd like to thank the Marshall County Public Library, MediaCom, and our audience members, and our elected officials for being here tonight. Good night, and please travel safely.